Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. So, this episode, I'm going to talk about something that really doesn't make a lot of sense, at least for the first article. So, Ian Miles Chong tweets, while it makes perfect sense to blame white people for brutal face slashing attack on Noel Quintana. And why would he say something as ridiculous as that? Well, here is another tweet of a protest against violence on Asians. Unite Against White Nationalism rally currently underway at Washington Square Park. Activists are demanding justice against the influx of anti Asian violence that has always been around, but which has flourished in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. So here's the poster: Justice for the attack on Noel Quintana. End the violence towards Asians. Let's unite against white nationalism. 2 p.m. Saturday. Basically, the protest had already happened a few days ago, but why would anybody think this was a white nationalist who attacked Mr. Noel Quintana unless he was suffering from racial dysphoria or was exhibiting the effects of multiracial whiteness? I don't see how this is a white nationalism attack on an Asian man. I feel terribly sorry that Mr. Quintana had to go through this. However, do not blame white people for this, because it was not a white person who slashed him in the face. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can definitely see the individual who slashed him in the face, and you could tell that he is not a white man. All you got to do is just look up Noel Quintana. You can look up his attacker, and you'll see these images. And it's probably one of the most egregious doublespeak moments you can have, right? Because the very same news organizations that say you need to trust what we tell you, there is an increase of white nationalist attacks on Asian people. And we're going to use this attack on an Asian gentleman as an excuse to say white nationalism is bad, right? It's a huge leftist talking point. And they'll even use when a black person attacks an Asian person, and they'll still blame it on white nationalism. So that's why I kind of tongue in cheek said, well, maybe this person suffers from multiracial whiteness and is exhibiting traits of white nationalism, even though they are not white. Perhaps they're transracial. I don't really understand what's going on. I don't understand the argument. And all you're going to do is further divide the country. As a nation, we need to unify, but right now you can't unify with people who don't live in reality. If you think this was a white nationalist attack, then how am I supposed to unify with you? I'm not a white person, but even I can see how dangerous this is, because you cannot unify with someone who's essentially what is this? Someone who does not accept reality as it is. Is it a schizophrenic person? How are you supposed to unite with somebody who thinks when a black person attacks an Asian person that's an exhibited trait of white nationalism? I don't understand. I can't unite with a schizophrenic mindset, and that seems to be cutting one direction. Hey, we're going to blame all our woes on one group of people. That seems awfully, awfully dangerous. But I'll leave that there for now. Let's jump over to Canada. Canada apparently decided to grow a pair, but not Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau is taking the Joe Biden approach of tacitly supporting the Uyghur genocide in China. Who would have thought that the man who hated Trump and the man who seems to like Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau, both are a fan of genocide. They won't speak out against it because they're afraid of China. So basically, Canada's government, I don't know exactly how it's structured, and they called out basically China for the Uyghur genocide. So to the objection of Justin Trudeau, Canada declared China's treatment of its Muslim Uighur minority a genocide on Monday, a move Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did not support. Canada is now the second country to declare a genocide in China's Xinjiang region, after former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo did so before leaving office last month. That move is currently under review by the Biden administration, which probably means the Biden administration is not going to support it. You already had Joe Biden come out in public and basically take the moral relativist stance and say, well, if the Chinese people support what's happening to the Uyghurs, who am I to say that what they're doing is wrong? Well, that's a disgusting thing to say. That would be like saying if the rest of the world, so if it was socially acceptable for the US to rape, pillage, and steal the Native American land, but in 2020, right? So we're using today's standards, we're pretending as if this is happening today, because I don't like basically casting our moral standards, moral norms of today and shining that light back 100 years, because guess what, everything we did 100 years ago, it's completely different. The frame of reference 100 years ago was completely different than today, so we're going to base it as if it was happening today. So imagine if the US government went onto one of these national reservations, on one of these Indian reservations, and basically said, hey, we're taking your land. It sucks to be you. We're going to re educate you, and we're going to take your children away from their mothers. We're going to put them in a government, basically preschool education, and we're going to have them chant, we love the government. Basically what's happening with the Uyghur population. If basically the argument I'm trying to make is, now imagine if the rest of the world says, well, it's okay if Americans are on board with basically stealing the Native Americans' lands here in America, then, well, who are we to say then what they're doing is genocide, right? Who are we to say that what they're doing is wrong? Because, well, wrong is wrong, right? This is 2020. As a society, we have a standard of norms basically saying we've gone to war for less. And so I don't understand, not saying that we should go to war with China, but you should definitely call them out. You should put some economic pressure on them. And that's what doesn't make any sense. It's, why are you so afraid to put economic pressure on somebody who is committing genocide, somebody who is attacking a race of people based solely on their religion? It is disgusting. And as the leader of the free world, Joe Biden said it's a-okay to basically attack Muslims because they're Muslim, because you need a strong China. Who are we to tell China what is right or wrong for them to do? We're not saying that, hey, China, your diet is not right, or hey, China, your the way your work facilities are not correct, right? We're not saying that. We're saying, hey, it is wrong for you to basically throw people in these re-education camps for the sole purpose of them not looking like you, or actually being religious as opposed to communists. That is an issue. On a matter like genocide, Canada needs to send a clear and unequivocal signal that we all stand up for human rights and the dignity of human rights, even if it means sacrificing some economic opportunity, Conservative Party leader Aaron O'Toole said last week when calling for the vote on this non-binding resolution, which was brought forth by Canada's main opposition party. Trudeau and the senior members of his cabinet were not present at the vote. He has been hesitant to support calls for declaring the persecution of Uyghurs a genocide. When it comes to the application of this very specific word genocide, we simply need to ensure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed before determination like that is made. So it's important to note, apparently conservatives around the world is calling out what's happening in China. Democrats around the world seem to be a-okay with it. So it seems to support my theory of liberal fascism. If you're a liberal, I'm sorry to admit it, but you support fascism. You need to not look any farther than the mass lockdowns. You need to see the government response to the coronavirus lockdowns. You need to see liberal politicians and their response to the Uyghur genocide. You need to look at liberal politicians and their response to free speech. You need to look at liberal politicians and their response to individual freedoms. They wish to take away your individual freedoms so they can take over your life. That's just the sad fact of the matter. I'm in the process of actually trying to write a book. I'm trying to find a publisher, but the way the book is going to be written, it's going to be based in reality, right? But it's going to be a dystopian future based off of actually what's happening right now. And by my dystopian future, I mean it's actually based on legislation that is currently trying to be passed in either the state level or the federal level here in the United States of America. So I'm not using some obscure, well, in Poland they're trying to pass this, or in New Zealand they're doing that. No, 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 no. I'm using laws that are currently being passed or being proposed here in the United States, and I'm using that as the basis of the dystopian future, which would occur over the course of the next 4 years, going into the next presidential election. Basically, the punchline would be that you're going to have mass conservatives, a lot of white people, or people who look white. That's going to be the thing too. You're going to have even black people who they will then consider white because they don't think the way they want them to think. And so if you're interested in that, just leave a comment down below. If you think that's the most ridiculous thing ever, let me know down in the comments below as well. But I think it's going to be interesting because I don't think there's a lot of the dystopian novels take place 20 years from now, but this is going to be basically a timeline of what I think if all of the worst things could happen, right? If everything wrong does occur through these laws, if these laws are just shoved down people's throats, what is the worst thing that can happen? And basically, I see that eventually you're going to label an entire group of people domestic terrorists. And then once you label them domestic terrorists, you're going to have them have their rights and their guns and their free speech and all this stuff taken away because they're a threat to society. And their only threat to society is voting for somebody else other than you, right? And then your third step is going to be, well, if they're so dangerous, their ideology is dangerous, that's going to be a risk to individuals. So maybe we should start re-educating them. Maybe we should detain them for 6 months at a time without a judge's approval. And then we're going to start giving them medical treatments. We'll possibly castrate them. We'll possibly rape the women. We'll possibly do a lot of things because that is what's happening in China. That's what's happening to the Uyghur Muslims. So I think there's a real big parallel what's happening in the United States and what's currently happening in China. But in the United States, we have to go about it through a different way. You have to go about it through the legislative process. And unfortunately, in the legislative process, a lot of these bills are already being proposed, and that's what's most disturbing. So, and finally, we're going to go to something a little more lighthearted from The Guardian. Drug-sniffing dog finds cereal frosted with $2.8 million worth of cocaine in Ohio. That's right. I feel like this would be the best cereal in the world because talk about a great pick-me-up, right? U.S. Customs agents made a surprise discovery when a sniffer dog investigated what looked to be a perfectly innocent shipment of frosted cereal, only to discover that the sugar coating was in fact a large amount of cocaine. The Cincinnati Enquirer reported that BICO, a narcotic detector dog with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, uncovered the haul of drugs in a shipment of breakfast cereal from South America that was headed to Hong Kong. Officers found white powder and the flakes were coated in a grayish substance after the dog alerted on the shipment. The value of the drug was estimated at nearly $3 million. Richard Gillespie, Cincinnati port director, said in a press statement, "The men and women at the port of Cincinnati are committed to stopping the flow of dangerous drugs, and they continue to use their training, intuition, and strategic skills to prevent these kinds of illegitimate shipments from reaching the public. Frosted cereal flakes, while ingenious, are far from the most unusual way drug smugglers have hidden their illicit product. Others include a wig, a pair of fake buttocks, inside hollowed out pineapples, and even under the habits of drug mules pretending to be nuns." But I think the cereal thing is quite hilarious. I actually sent this story to a podcast that I follow at the Drinking Bros, the D. Anthony Holloway. He partakes, I believe. So I thought maybe this might have been his cereal, but I was mistaken on that one. But that is going to be it for now. I'll be posting a couple other videos today. Until then, I'll see y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.